Hey everybody, it's David here with BeckerArt. Hello everybody who's here. I see there's it's looking, and I'm all set up today, and so no problems with anything here this morning or this afternoon. And so welcome everybody. And today's beer, and for anybody who knows or doesn't know, I've never been here. I do a rating for a beer, and sometimes people ask me, "Why are you doing ratings for a beer?" And I'm not sure why. I started a long time ago when COVID started, and I think I was in my studio, and we always had a friend watching, and we always had a beer. And so then I thought, well, why don't we rate it? And I do a terrible job rating them, anyways. But I toast it. I toast you guys. And so today's beer, and I shouldn't open it yet, but it's Shoots and Roots. Shoots and Roots, and it's again, this is back to Dubuque. This is a Dubuque beer that I bought a case of, or like a 6 pack of, and this is the last one. So no more sour beers. This is a sour beer, a kettle sour with strawberries, rhubarb, and pie crust flavor. I don't know. So this is the last one from Dubuque, and so we'll see how this one tastes. I don't know why I bought so many sour beers from that place, but we'll fear. Look at that terrible pour. So we'll let that go down. And today we're doing a lantern, and I already done it in class this afternoon. And so this afternoon we did it, and I did not too bad a job. There's a few things I'm going to do a little bit differently. And usually when I do it twice, it's kind of the best always the second time. And I'm almost feeling that if you're doing a painting in your studio, or even maybe outside, plein air, it's good to do a small study just before you get down and doing the real thing. Thanks, guys. So do one beforehand and do like a little study. This was kind of like a study that in the afternoon I do like a study. I'll show you in a second. And then to do the second one, you're always going to do it better. And so let's just go here real quick to show the supplies for anybody new here. Supplies are Holbein watercolors, my BeckerArt brushes that you can get on my website, and we're doing the Legion Stone paper on a board. And then also my brush. Well, I said my brushes already, right? No masking fluid, no transfer paper. And so let's go to our website to find out anything. And I'm kind of trying to redo my website and the paintings, so there's no new paintings on there. And it's really a bad thing that I haven't had that many paintings on there. And especially I'm trying to get some people to see my work and stuff. And so we're going to be putting that up there soon, and we'll see on that. And down here is where you get my newsletter. And again, my newsletter comes out every Tuesday, and right there, and there's the BeckerArt.net or davidartbecker.com for my website. Value study. Okay, so here we go. This is something I should have always, I don't ever do this before I get into class. And so I'm going to start doing that, I think, because really after I get back here to do the evening one, then I start looking at the value study and I go, boy, I didn't even think about that way. So it's so important to look at your notan to the blacks and whites of the thing so that you can really see where you want to keep your lights and darks. I'm just reading everybody here. Hey, everybody. Thanks for the birthday wishes. And my birthday is always on Veterans Day. And so that was really nice. I'm not going to tell you how old I am because I'm really, really old. And Maria doesn't drink beer, but she likes the rating. Tradition is fun. Thanks. So let's go back to the to the value study. So if you're looking at this, why is it so important? People always ask me, why is it so important that you do the value study of black and white? Because it gives you your whole pattern and how you're going to paint the painting. It's all about how the lights and darks. That way you know exactly how you're going to paint your painting. You're going to do step one is your lights, and so you look for your lights. And with you make it black and white, you know exactly what your lights are. My sky in the background, my light bulb, and everything inside here is going to be light, and I'm going to make it warm inside. And then this light down here, everything else is in the dark. Even though it's a middle tone, like right here, it's a middle tone. That doesn't matter. You have to make sure that the lights are in the light and the darks are in the dark. And end of story. That's all you do. And so, yeah, so then we're going to just do this right there. We're going to do the lights and then the darks. And like I said, you always have to decide if your middle tone is going to be towards the dark area or towards the light area, because that way you know exactly when to paint it. So that's the reason I do it. And it shows a simple value pattern, and it makes everything so easy if you can make a nice value pattern of black and white. Not gray tones. Gray tones have to be shifted to one side or the other. And I keep on saying that, but it's so important. This is right here. That's how I always go to my value pattern here in the evening, is that you need to do that. And I know a lot of times when you're out there, you don't feel like doing a value pattern or you're doing a value sketch. But I do that in the afternoon. It's almost like doing a value pattern because it doesn't turn out exactly the way I want it to because I'm not doing a value pattern. So do your value pattern. It's very important. Let's go to our tabletop and I'll show you what I did this afternoon. So here's what I did this afternoon. And this picture is a little elongated, and so I made it, 11 by 14, and it goes a little bit skinny, and so I widened it a little bit, and I did put it in the middle. So this is more of a formal composition. Get the thing out of there. So this is a little bit more formal composition, so that's in the middle, right? And it works. It's a little bit off. The light bulb is a little bit off, but I think I'm going to change a little bit of the coloring because I didn't get dark enough. And this one could actually be done in black paper because there's a lot of darks in it. And I kind of got a little bit too light on some of the things. And look at this pattern right here. Does that look like it's in the dark area? No. So I'm not following my value pattern well enough. Like in right here, if you look at this, look at those leaves, how much darker they are, and here they're not. And so it doesn't make this part up here. Here it's okay because it's dark, but follow that value pattern so that things work like the values. And the color can sometimes ruin things because that color is almost too strong and it's nowhere else. So this orange, it's a little bit here, but then we got yellow, orange, it's just not working as how I liked it. So we're going to fix that this afternoon or this evening. So here's my drawing, and I've been doing a lot of sketching with the pencil lately. So I know, and especially when I'm sitting here just sketching it up, and then what I did is I decided that I like doing the dark areas with a pencil now. I just like it so that I know when I'm painting where to make things dark. Like I just go in here, and that's all really dark, right? And so just put the sketch there and go like that. Now, if you want to get rid of the graphite, where's my kneaded rubber eraser? Hold on one second. If you look at my kneaded rubber eraser, what I do is I take my kneaded rubber eraser and I make it round, and I get rid of the graphite by just taking and rolling over it with the kneaded rubber eraser. I just roll over it. I get rid of the lines, but I get rid of the graphite but leave the lines. So that way it doesn't mix in with your paint. It's not so important in the dark areas because that's dark lead, and so it'll be dark when you put the dark paint over it. So it doesn't really matter that much. But if it's in the light area and you get too much graphite, it's going to affect the light. But this is a good way of doing it, taking up the graphite but leaving the line. All right. So here we go. Let me test the beer first and cheer you guys on. And so cheers, everybody. It tastes like an apple pie. It actually tastes like a cider. This actually tastes like a cider. And I really like ciders. I like ciders even more than beer. This one's actually pretty good. I'm going to give this one a 10. This is pretty good. This is very good, actually. So cheers, everybody. Cheers to you. And paint. Today we had I belong to the Lakes Region Watercolor Guild. And we had a lady do a demonstration today, a portrait. And really good job. But I was kind of thinking about how to use the paint and how much paint to use. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about that while I'm doing my demonstration here. So what do I do first? Remember I said lights to dark, the BeckerArt 3-step. The BeckerArt 3-step is that I'm going to do all the lights first. And that way you can put the darks over it if you get some of that light into dark area. So I'm going to take my big brush and then just go in here. And the only white of the paper, I always look for that too. What is the only thing that's going to be white is maybe a little reflection into the bulb right here. And do I want to make that white of the paper, or do I want to use white paint? The best is always using white paper. But let's say it's too hard to go around something, then just use white paint. But the best is to keep the white. The more you can keep the white, the better. So the first thing I'm going to do is just wet this area here a little bit. Take a little bit of orange, maybe a little bit of gold, yellow, and just kind of make it golden yellow, and just kind of go in there. And I can go into the dark areas. I can go into the dark areas because I'm going to be going with my dark over that. So I can actually just, and I do want to make enough pigment so it kind of floats and gives me a nice feeling of a wash. I mean, it's all about how much pigment. And I keep on talking about that a lot with my classes lately because it's all about pigment. Everything is about the pigment, not about the water. The water is just where you put your pigment into. And so knowing how much water you have there is not as important as knowing how much pigment you're going to lay into the water, because it's all about the pigment. The pigment is the star. The water is just there for you to put the pigment into. And there's a way of tinting it. You can either tint, which is not hardly any pigment, and then there's a wash. I call it a wash because I put a lot of pigment in a wash, where I don't do that much for when I'm just doing a tint of color on things. So here I'm keeping some of the white of the bulb. This is okay. I can go right over that because this is all going to be dark, and so I can just go right over that. I'm not sure why I went around that. And floating your pigment, which is one of those things I should coin because I think I'm the only one that uses it, floating your pigment. And so basically you're taking water, float the pigment on top of that. Take the pigment, float on top of that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I saw you in person on your birthday. Actually, Monday was Veterans Day, so Monday was my birthday. But thank you so much for coming to the big party we had for my dad. We had a celebration of life at this weekend on Sunday, and it was a super fun time. My dad would have loved it. He was a party animal, that man. And so, see, this is all the warmth. And I could put a little bit of warmth here where it's going to be a little warm, just to put that underneath there. And this is all like warm. Now, I'm not going to put this in the background because the background darks I want to have pushed back a little bit farther than I did this afternoon. And so I'm going to get the blue in there next. And so let me see if I can float some more pigment in here. I like when the pigment does its own thing, like it floats and give me a nice granulation. Granulation is one of those things that you have to do in the first wash and get a lot of water down and put it there. You're 9 out of 10 times. Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, sometimes I don't know. I don't give many beers too low a number because I may not like it and it's hoppy or whatever, but I'm not going to give it a low beer just because I don't like it, that kind of beer. But for that kind of beer, I always give it what I think is going to be kind of close to what somebody who likes hoppy beers would give it. Like many of the IPAs I don't like so much. All right, so now let's go into the background here. So orange, blue, sky. This is kind of turquoisey, the sky back here, and so it's kind of neat. It's kind of different, but I want to keep it light or bright. Light or bright is one of the things we were talking about on Sunday, is that sometimes something can be not so light, but the brightness of the color kind of takes over for the lightness of it. And I'm not sure if you understand that, but it's like lightness and brightness of a color, the hue being very intense a color, that can sometimes also be assumed as a light area. So I'm going to use Verditor Blue. I think I'm going to use this Verditor Blue. I'm just going to put it down. And I didn't wet first. I'm going to wet it as I go along. And so it's usually like a good color for a sky for the... Put a little bit of ultramarine in there too. Let me clean out my ultramarine in here a little bit. I'm just going to go right to here. And I'm going to go around this stuff. And so I guess I'm going to make it bright and not as light as I did this afternoon. But let the brightness of the color kind of come into effect. And so I'm wetting as I go along. I call that wetting as you go along. So ultramarine blue and Verditor. It's a Holbein color, Verditor. So I'm going to put the blue in there first before I put in, this is part of my lights. I'm still doing step 1, which are my lights. And I'm doing this as I go along. I'm painting as I go along, wetting as I go along. Gonna go into this dark right here. Bring this down through here. And I know it's more turquoise, so maybe I'll put a little turquoise in there too. Let's see. I love washy, wet washes that just where the pigment just floats around and just does its own thing. Those are the best washes, really. And this board is a little bit more like, not like hot press. You see a little bit of texture, but it doesn't absorb very much, so it'll dry fast. It also shows a little bit of a texture that I'm not really it's not the best texture. But I've been testing all kinds of, this is a Canson board. And so I'm always testing all different kinds of boards and everything. But I highly recommend the Legion papers. They have some great papers, but I'm always working everything, testing everything. And so there's my blue, my light blues, and I know it's kind of like very brushy, but I did it on purpose. It will still dry very smooth, but what I'm going to do here now is show you how to get a really dark, like a dark right now, because these are my lights now. That was it. That's my lights. Everything else is dark, right? The lantern is dark. Remember the value pattern? It was all, the only thing that was light was this light bulb and the background there. So now I'm into my middle tones and my darks. And so I'm just going to go in there while it's wet so I can get soft edges. And I'm just going to pick up some really dark darks. And I'm using a lot of pigment. Again, if I don't use a lot of pigment, then it's going to dry so much lighter because what I'm using is transparent watercolor. It's not gouache. If I were using gouache like this, it would even be more opaque, but this is transparent, so you have to lay in a lot of paint. And so I'm gonna go in here and just start putting in these leaves and make them a little bit of reds and orange, but see how they're just gonna be kind of plopped into the water, and I don't have to get the exact shape. You know what it's gonna be. I mean, you can kind of tell. You don't have to get the exact shape of these leaves, enough that they're right next and they're going to have branches going to them. They'll explain it enough that those are leaves. And then a little bit of blue in here. Just going to kind of, and then it was like maybe up there was a little bit of light, and then down here was a little bit of light. And there's some breaking colors that go through here. Underneath here is also dark in the inside of the lamp. Look how thick I'm working. I'm working really thick because it's wet, but I got to hurry up and get in here while it's still, this board dries very, very fast. I guess I could mist it a little bit. I have a little mister. I don't have I have a sprayer, but I should be using a mister because this is going to give me dots. It's a small one I just happen to have right here. I think that's a Dollar Tree even mister. And so this has all the way down. I know it's weird to be this fast into your darks, but sometimes there's not many lights or anything. That's like when I said this would be probably a good one to do on black paper because there's hardly any lights and there's more darks, and so you can just put tints on the dark if you're using black paper. A little bit of orange here. This. And also, let's do some blue leaves. Let's do some leaves way in the back that are really dark blue, because that way they look like they're farther back. So down here, especially down here where they look like they're farther away. And then we've got the branches going down. So let's put some branches. I didn't like how the branches fell on this, like making an X. I don't want an X, and I don't want this going right to the point either here. So I'm making it a little bit slightly different from what it is in the photo. Branches here and there. And it's out of focus, so don't be afraid of just going in and making things different. It's not like it has to be exactly like the photo. Here I'm putting some branches in here and there. Also, I can wipe out areas too. I can go in there if you feel like later on, if I want to wipe things out, or wipe things out while it's wet. Like while it's wet, look at how I use my towel anywhere. That's what I don't believe people that don't use towels for their tabletop. It's so much fun just doing this. I've gotten so many people to use that. I was gonna look at those towels that shrink really small that you can put it on there. somebody just told me about back when I was at Dillman's. One of the ladies told me about the like dog pads, like for their, you put it in the house. It's like a pad that for your pets, and they come in packs of like 10, and you can get it at the dollar store. And actually, one got some. They're pretty neat because they absorb all the water, so you can use that underneath your painting and just go like this on it, and it'll absorb the water out of your brush. I was gonna maybe do one of those things for. I should do it because I've never done a video on that either yet. All right, so there's my background pretty much. It's going to be, I think that's fine enough for now. If I feel I need to get some more lights blue going through there, I can do that later with just putting opaque blue in there like this. I can just put little opaque colors, or I can wipe it out and I can do that afterwards. And I had a little bit too much water here, so I got a little bit of a watermark, but that's kind of neat. All right, so now our middle tone. That was our lights with our middle tone, leaves and darks over here. Now let's get everything can be one value, actually. So I can probably do that all with one value of a bluish gray, and which I didn't do last time. I made things so differently, but so I want to do here is just wet everything. I'm going to go in there and just make it a dark bluish gray. And I like a middle tone, so I'm making the blues and the burnt sienna type colors. A little bit more blue. And that seems kind of weird to go through here, and I'm losing all my all my pencil lines. So I'm gonna go in here, a little bit of blue. And all my shading now is gone. See all that shading I did? But that's okay. I know it seems weird to go through all this like this, but you watch how it's going to be really cool. And I'm doing it like a middle tone. I'm getting in there with a middle tone. And then I'll pull out some of the light areas while it's still wet. And you notice how I always work areas that I try to work the area and not move farther until I get this area to where I want it. So it's a little bit lighter first. I go in there with a little bit more lighter blues, realizing that it is going to dry about 20% lighter. Except, excuse me, except if I use a lot of paint, it doesn't. Like the thicker the paint, the less it's going to bleed to 20% lighter. That's really good. Not bad at all. And so this part over here is a little bit lighter, and again, I should use some of that blue that I use in the background too, because that's reflecting into that area. So I'm going to use that right away. Use that part right into your, because that's like, if you can get to that color that you used before, I used these two colors, so make sure you get a little bit of that in there as a middle tone. And like I lost all my drawing because yeah, it's like it's pretty much gone. We got a little bit too much pigment, but that's okay. I can kind of tell where it's going to be at. And I'm going to go back in, making things darker. This is my middle tone. This is my middle tone right now. And I can make it look a little bit textury, like it's going up and down. Like I can make it look a little bit more like the grain on wood. I can do that right now a little bit, but right here is going to be that little holder part. And we'll get that in there later. And this little white light that's going to be in there, I'm going to rub that out later because I tried it this afternoon. And if I'm stopping this big wash, it's so much harder to do by stopping the big wash. So just go in there later or while it's wet and just fool with it while it's wet. Nice and dark, up and down, nice and wet. And I'm going to give a little texture in here, put a little warmth in there. And I am going to use black, solid black in some spots because that way it has the feeling of the darkest color or darkest value I can possibly get would be black. And then right here, wet this all down here. Make it nice and wet so you can have time to work it. And this down here, but see how bright this is already? By having those darks, which I didn't do this afternoon, I didn't do dark enough. Now look at it, it's like it's shining. That is so bright. It's like the light is on. And so that's what I did. That's what I missed when I did this afternoon. And I will get this light back in there, but first let me just get the big areas done. Get the big dark areas done. I also added a little ball on the bottom of this thing. I'm not sure why. I just felt it needed a little ball type of thing on the bottom of this little thing. It just seemed like it abruptly went across. I felt like it needed something else there. And I know I'm using the big brush, but the big brush also has a very fine point to it, and so look at it, I can even go like a rigger brush. And I know there's a light right here, but you watch. I'll get back to that in a second. All right, so now I'm getting the texture of like a board. And now watch this. I'm going to take some water in my brush, take a little bit of orange. I'm just going to manipulate this area right here and get it to be looking light. You can also do this when it's dry, but as long as it's wet, as long as it's evenly wet, that's what you want, evenly wet. And it probably is easier, I think it would be easier doing it while it is dry, and you go back into it later and just rub out some of that really light area. That would be the easiest thing, but I mean, I can do a little like this too. The thing is, I was asking the lady today that was giving the demonstration. Sorry, I forgot her name. About how many paintings she did to get where she's at, and because all my students, maybe most of them paint maybe once a week. And so I was just wanted to show and ask her, how many paintings have you done? How many paintings did you do to get where you're at? How good she was? How do you get there? And she says she painted every day for a long time, and so that's a thing right there. If you're painting every day, that's how you get better. You don't get better by painting once a week. I know that a lot of people that's the only time they have, but if you want to get really good, really fast, work more than once or twice a week. I'm going to try to this year or next year. I mean, next year I'm going to be not doing as many workshops, like smaller workshops. I'm going to be doing maybe some more Zoom workshops, and also I'm trying to get my book written about how to draw from your imagination. And so with that book, I may do like a 2-month where we work each other every day for 2 months. Every day you're going to have an assignment. And, we're going to see how many people want to do that. And just get in there and work it. Because like if the more you work, the better you're going to get. I'm just telling you, that's the way to get good, is doing a lot of work. Because you make mistakes then, and the more mistakes you make, the more you learn. You learn for every time you make a mistake, you learn something more. And that's because you're working. You're working a lot of time. You're spending a lot of time working every day doing a painting. Because every time you make a mistake, you realize what you did, and then next time you're not going to do that again. Or you figure it out and why you made a mistake. All right, so there we have the wood. You need to work it. You need to work a lot. All right, so there we have the background already. We've got, look at the light and shining there a little bit. That worked out not too bad. This is going to be darker. It looks like darker already, but I'm going to put solid black there because, sometimes it's okay to use black that makes it almost non-colorful, because that's what sometimes it needs, because in the photo that's actually black. So, and I learned that from Andrew Wyeth. If you look at a couple of his paintings, he would go solid black, and a lot of times he would just use black by itself with the blue. That's how come I actually changed, because I saw a painting of his in Rockland, Maine at the museum in Rockland, the Wyeth Museum there. And I walked in and there was a big painting of blueberries and one big blueberry basket. And it was basically black. It was black with blue. That's it. And after I saw that, I go, you know what? I've been always told never to use black by itself and always mix my blacks. And I saw that. I'm like, forget that. I'm going to, and I teach now, I'll teach all my students, go ahead and use black. And if you want to make it colorful, just add black to your color. Add color to your black to make it colorful. So now I'm going in for my dark detail because this is all my darks. All my large darks are done. All my mediums are done. All my lights are done. So now it's my dark details. So I'm literally going to go in there and do all the detailing of the darks. And I'm going to sometimes use solid black with maybe some blue here. And this is pretty darn dark. Look at how dark this gets. And, if I see that in the picture it is almost black, I'll do that. And I'll even put color in there, though. Once I'm putting the dark in there, while it's wet, I can also put like maybe some red in that black, just to make it like it's reflecting some of that gold. I can reflect it right into the black. See, I was just slightly in there. It's like black, but then there's a little bit of color in there. Oh, there's a train. And then I'm going to go around here. And so nice and dark, maybe a purple here. Yes, this is a Canson panel. Yeah, I'll turn it around and I'll show you. It's a Canson panel. It's a very thin panel. I'm not used to these because it's very, very thin. But it works out fine. I've been working a lot on panels only because, I like to... it's 11 by 14. I can frame it just like that. I don't have to go and get it. Another, I don't have to mount it down. It's all ready to be framed when it's done. So now here, I got to make this up because I lost my lines. I don't even see any lines anymore. So that's just made up. And that's fine because I know kind of like what it looks like. And then there's all these lines around this like little... And once my dark is wet, I have to make sure that I can put some color in there too. Let's say that I'm going to put like maybe a little bit of blue in there, maybe turquoise from the sky. I can put a little bit of that in there. And then this gets a little bit lighter up here. There's a little pattern of things going on. But it's not that important up here anyways, if you think about it. How important is it up here? What's happening? I don't want my eye up there so much, and so... And then there's a little bit of light right here. And so I didn't have the light because I put it really dark before. So watch this. I'm going to rub out a little bit. And one thing is about boards, it's really easy to rub out. See, I just rub out a little bit right there. And that'll be like the outer edge of that. And so take my towel right there, wipe off my brush, and then it's wet. And then just pull these things out of there. And then maybe the top of this can be wiped out. Wiping out is another technique that many teachers never teach, but wiping out is a good thing. It's hard to do it on arches because arches is a paper that sucks in a real lot too, so you have to pressure a little bit harder. But look at how I'm getting by easily getting the paint back away from the paper, pulling it back up, and then just taking it away by a damp brush. By a damp brush, I can just go in here and just get my lights back. And that's another way of getting the light back. And let's say you feel it was too light. Well, then you put the dark back in. You can put the dark back in. You go back in here and just put the dark back in. Let's say I want it a little bit dark right here. Now there's a big pattern of all kinds of stuff in here. Let me get this part done first here before I go back into that part. Let me just see how to get this part. So I'm going to go and get all the colors I've been using elsewhere. So now I've got a color palette that I worked with. And so I got to stick with that color palette. The blues, this blue, this Vertitor, I'll get in there if I'm using a dark blue. And then I'm just going to go in here and first just get these middle tones in here. And I'm wetting on dry paper because when I'm wetting on a dry paper, it gives me a chance to like work it while it's wet now. And I'm getting a hard edge. But I can go like this, go all around. Now it's wet and I can work that area. So if I want it really thick and I want to get in here and make like a thicker line right there, but it's going to be soft edge. But look, it's nice and thick, and I can make a line in the water with a lot of pigment. Thanks, Lynn, for the birthday wishes. Thanks, Lynn. Am I making frames? No, I'm not making frames. I'm buying them from Jerry's Artorama. I really don't have enough time anymore to do framing because I used to have a frame company that I used to make a lot of frames for the paint parties that I used to do, but not anymore. It's one of those things I don't have time anymore to do framing because it took a while. It's a whole thing to do frames, and I just don't have the time anymore. And they're very inexpensive. You go to Jerry's Artorama, some of those plein air frames, very inexpensive. And I couldn't even make them that cheap as I buying them. I should put that link in my. Maybe I'll put the link on the descriptions later on. There's either gold or black. That's the problem with that particular frame, but it's very inexpensive. Like I think 11 by 14, and this size is really inexpensive. It's like $24 or something like that for a frame that's kind of big and stuff. And it's a nice frame. So again, I'm wetting the darks throughout here, and once it's wet, I will go in there with different colors. And I'm trying to make these parts dark that are dark. Now there are parts that are kind of rugged, and they're kind of has texture to it, and some of it's shiny and makes it a little bit different colors. So you can do that if you want, or just make it all dark and then go back in later and maybe texture it with another color. Like I'm gonna go in here with a little bit of orange. And so I try to get the biggest parts of the dark all the time. So I wet it as I go along, and this brush is perfect size for these brush strokes. And you notice how I'm getting a little bit warmer when I face the bulb, because this area is the warm area, the only warm area. A little bit of it in the background, but right here it's really warm, and everything else should be cool. And it's a really good way of showing composition, is making one part, they're warms, and the other part the cools. So all the cools are in the background and away from the light, and then the light stands out to be the center of interest because it stands out so much. Now this kind of is a little bit dark, so I'm just going to wisp this right here. Wisping meaning I take my brush quickly across the page, and then down here I'll wipe out. I'll get back to my light. The thicker the paint while it's wet, the more it's not going to bleed. It's not going to bleed when it's wet or when it's thick, because the pigment is thicker than the water, and so it'll stay right there. No matter how wet it is, the pigment will stop and stay right there. All right, now inside here is a little bit, it's kind of violet-y right in the inside. So I'm going to take this little lilac color. It's going to kind of go there and just kind of push that this way. A little bit of red. Thank you, Lynn, for asking everybody to hit the like button. Thank you. I always forget to do that. Most students don't use panels, I would say. And there's a good reason for that. I mean, I was telling Legion actually this week, because they're trying to still sell a lot of their aluminum panels. And I told them that a student wouldn't use an aluminum panel. Mostly they don't. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, but it's kind of expensive. The aluminum panels are expensive, and that's more for plein air painting. So my students, what I have them do is, if you can mount them afterwards. I mean, you can do the paper, get that all out of the way, and then mount them afterwards. After you're done, then mount them, and that works just as good. I mean, especially if you're going to frame them standard size. You cover up a 1/4 of an inch, so it doesn't have to be super right on. Like you can be a 1/4 of an inch off, because that's what's going to be behind the frame mount. So you can be off a little bit, and that's all good. Now this goes up here, and should have been right here. And then this is inside there. So yeah, so I would say most of them just use paper. And then if they are doing something really good that they really like, they will mount it afterwards. because you can do that too. You can mount it after you're done, or some will mount them first because they, want to try a painting that they're going to do for somebody. And that's fine, because you're going to have to mount them on a board anyways, or if it's a thin sheet of paper, you want to wet the back so it'll stick onto like a plexiglass. Because when you're actually working, it's great to use a board because I don't have to put tape anymore. I used to tape all my paintings down. Remember, I used to tape them all down, and then you'd see that. But now they always go to the edge because I got a 1/4 of an inch. I don't want to tape this down the boards because then you lose the standard size. And it's getting pretty good. I mean, and people are doing it. Some, I'm trying to get everybody to paint standard size, if anything. If nothing at all, you don't have to do it on a board, you don't have to do this, but do make them standard size. That's more important than anything. Because the standard size, you can just mount it on something and you don't have to worry about it. And you can practice on standard size, because if you just happen to do something good, then you can just mount it right away into a frame. You first have to mount it on a board, and then right into a frame. So now I'm going in here and just making this dark around certain parts where it's dark inside here. And you notice I'm making it warm inside here and not so cool as the outside, because it's inside there and I feel that it needs to be warm. Like that's where you put the warmth. And a little bit of purple, a little bit of orange, and just make it warm in here, because that shows that the light, it could be dark, but it should be nice and warm. I'm just following the photograph now too. And a lot of this is it's a little bit too vibrant or warm. I want to dull it down a little bit. So more gray, and that's maybe with a little bit of blue. So gray it down a little bit. In the picture, it seems very purple. Everything seems very purple. So put a little bit of lavender in there, a little purple. Okay, purple and lavender is kind of a gray, so that's cool. Like this lilac I put over there, that's pretty good too. Lilac and lavender. Put that in there. It's a nice gray. And look at how, again, it's so bright, everything. When I first start out, what happens is it gets nice and dark, everything, but then as I go, it makes things lighter and lighter. Because look at if I put the shadow on there. I gotta figure that out somehow, that it just stays, because it's self-adjusting. The lighting adjusts itself, and I probably have to do a setting on my camera that doesn't do that. All right, so let's get the bottom of this here. I'll go back and do the final details, but first, always the big details. Like this lamp is a little bit darker right here. Of course, the lightest thing is going to be the light right here, because that's what's giving the light source off. And it's a very dim light source, so you don't have to make it really super bright. And then down here, we got a little bit of the blue. Now we're going back to the blue, because this is the outside of the lantern. So I'm going to start out with blue first. I'm pointing away. Yeah, Dave. Nice thing is you can sell them easier, and they have the same kind of look as an oil painting, because there's no glass in front of them with matte. I can't tell you how many times now I've sold, and they feel more rich, because there's no matte and glass in front of them. Because otherwise, and like I always tell my students all the time, is that we did that to ourselves. Watercolors did that to themselves by making prints of everything. They make prints of everything, and prints are so good nowadays. It kind of looks like your originals look like the prints. And so people are like, well, I can buy the print for $50 when you're selling the original for $350. And they're not looking, they're just looking for the picture. They don't care about the originality. They just want the picture. And if it looks the same, they're buying the cheaper one. It just makes sense. I mean, most people don't really realize, or they're not thinking it's going to be an investment. They're thinking of it as they want that painting and at the cheapest price. And so if it looks the same as if you're looking at it, the picture, and right next to each other nowadays, the prints look identical to the originals. And so, I can see why they're doing that. It's just, to them, they don't see a difference in the pictures, so, and they don't care about the originality. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. All right, so this part down here gets really dark then. And when I get really dark, I use a lot of paint. But there's still a lot of water in my brush too, but I'm using tons of paint, so I can do one wash and it's done. I do not have to go back in that area. And while it's wet, if you need to put something in there while it's wet, that's when you do it. Not later on, not on top of it while it's wet, because then it'll float. And then it'll just float in there and give you a nice soft edge if you need a soft edge. You can help it along the soft edge too if you feel like you need to help it along a little bit. You can control your pigment. And I'm running on Saturday, I'm running down to Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm going to be judging the Kentucky Watercolor Society show. And I got a 3-day workshop. And I teach all my students, the first thing you do is how to control your watercolor. I mean, we work wet into wet, and we just try to teach how to work that watercolor so that you can get soft edges, but control those soft edges. Here's a little pattern. There's a little pattern right here. And it's funny. The first award I ever got, when I was back in school at the American Academy. Right when I got out in 1983, now you're going to know how old I am. I got out of my school in 1983. In 1984, I got my first award for one of these art shows, and it was Kentucky Watercolor Society. It was in Louisville, Kentucky. And so I rode down there with my buddy. We both went, and on the way down, we were going through Brown County, Indiana, just taking tons of photographs. And, I went down there hoping that it would be cash, because then we were just going to spend it as students. I don't think I was a student. I think it was after I was a student. But we went down there on the weekend and got the award. I even got an award. And not only did I get in, but I got an award for my painting. I wish I would remember which painting that was. I wonder if they have records. I'm going to ask them if they have records of anything way back then. Because that was the first time I ever got into a show and I got an award. So we'll see if they have any kind of records of that when I get down there next week. So there we have the bottom here part. And I'm going to make that a little bit orange too, so it's a little bit of warmth on this side. And I'll go in there and get the dark details in a second. All right, so we also got to go in here and get more of the pattern of the wood grain. But let me just get the side of this really harsh and dark. Somebody had asked me recently about the time it takes them to do a painting, and they can't believe I can do a painting each time in 1 hour. But when I'm in my studio painting, I'm not doing them in an hour. I'm just doing them an hour because, I don't want people to hang around all night watching me paint. But and also I learned that through, and they want to know how to do that, and that's just through all the amount of work I've done as an illustrator, and we used to always have to get stuff done fast. But don't be worried about if you're slow or fast. That doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how fast you are in painting. It's that you do the painting and do it right, and learn how to make washes and all that stuff. It's more important than the speed. Speed doesn't mean anything. It's just that I'm so used to doing things fast because I did it my whole life fast in my job for 35 years. So that's 35 years. I did that every day, every week, work on boards, storyboards with marker renderings. And now here I'm just getting detail, right? I'm just gonna and then people ask me also, hey, how, you're talking the whole time you're painting. But I've done that also. I've taught also since then too. I've taught right out of school, and You know, you can't shut me off when I'm painting because it's just like I'm just telling you what I'm doing, basically. And so I lost my lines here. I can't see. I should have made them darker with my pencil. And so I'm just going to fake these a little bit and just hope I get close. And so these are lines that are in there. Here's one line that's still there. And I can go back into later on and wipe things out, put things back in. Now this is like a halfway point right here. And so that has this little line coming through. But it also has some light. So watch this. I'm just going to take my brush here real quickly and then just wet it and pull out the paint. So I'm just going to pull out the paint right there. And you can pull out the paint. See, that's not even close to the same thing. Oh, well. Yeah, that was way off. So I'll make this part a little bit lighter here. I'm just going to take my brush and then just like tickle it a little bit and take a little bit of the paint out. Still, now as it's wet, what I can do is I can keep the wetness to make the soft edges, but take out a little bit of the paint. And then just bleed that into the dark. And when you're doing portraiture like this lady did today, you know, you have to spend a little bit more time like that. It goes a little bit slower. Take your time. Get the things, you know. The slower you work, sometimes it's better because you can let things dry, and they dry slowly or fast, and you can wipe out. And when you get to detail stage, you should be doing that anyways. You should be slowing down and get your details the way you want them. I could also go back in and redraw it if I feel like, you know, in your studio and you lost all your lines. Don't just guess, redraw them, you know, because you spend all this time on this painting, you know, what's another couple of minutes and stop, take a break, and then resketch it. Like resketch the things that you think you're not quite sure how they look or how they're going to work. Resketch it in there because you need lines. For watercolor, you need lines. Yeah, this got a little bit off here, all this stuff here, but that's okay. Now I'm going to rub out a little bit on the top of each part of this, and so it'll look like it's lit up on the top part. See, I just tickle it. I just tickle it, let it bleed back into the brush. Because once you wet it, then you take the paint and take the water and let it go back, suck back into the brush while you're tickling it. So it's wet. Then release it, get it back. Because on this side it's a lot of darks, but there's also on the top here it's lighter. But too much water then will take away too much. So if it's too much, then leave it damp and then bring back in some color. Maybe a little bit lighter color this time. Like just go back in while it's wet and then float some darker color or some lighter color that you didn't use before. And then what you can even do is later on is go back in with opaques, go in with gouache, and then just go in with a gouache to make it lighter again on top of that. Let's see. All right, see, now this is a little bit too light down here, so I'm just going to put a little wash, a little tint over that. See, a little bit too light. Let's do like our light bulb real quick. Get there some darker purpley, or a little purple, a little orange, and then just go in and kind of get the inside of the light bulb. And it has a bunch of lines, and there's a line that goes right down the middle, kind of the light bulb. And then there's a big light glow. There's a reflection of, because it's glass, so you're going to get reflection too. But there is the white, so keep the white there. It goes down here, and then there's a nice dark through inside here. And down here there's a dark. Is there any questions? The finer shows I bring all original unless it's been sold. Then I break out glitchies. The lower level shows I bring both. And of course there are shows that demand original only. Yeah, it's each show's a little different, and you have to watch it though, that make sure that if it's the originals, those are the expensive ones. So I always say that if you're selling originals and you want to sell them, and you have prints of the same thing, don't bring the same picture. Then bring different pictures that are not the same as the originals there into the booth, because they're always going to take the cheaper one. I would say most of the time, 95% of the time they're going to take the cheaper one, and then it kills you because you spend so much time on the original. And I actually don't really I don't do prints. I've never done prints because I have so many originals that I have to get rid of those first. I gotta move this light away because it's so bright. It's a little bit better, not as bright. Yeah. I can't bring them down anymore, my light either. I have to figure out what my camera's doing. All right, last thing is to go in there and get the darks in the background here. And I'm going to use some solid black with some blue and purple. Really, really dark. Or should I? This looks okay. Let's see. This is darker behind here, so let's go do this for a second. And then I'm going to take my big brush and I'm going to do something called wisping. I like to do wisping with this, and it's a very much a dry brush thing. And if I go straight on it, I'm picking up just lines that look like, lines from the grain of the wood. And it's solid black with purple and a little black and blue. So it's really thick, but with a little bit of water in there. And then I wisp it, or I just brush it really lightly, almost tickling too. And then down here there's some. And this gives you texture because it's not wet in the wet, but it's just a way of getting texture. And look how nice and dark it looks then too. All right, so here there's some. Now I'm going to take this, I forgot what they call these kind of brushes. Like some people call them dragon or stripers, or so it's a really long brush, and I find these to be really good for grain of the wood, and maybe a little bit of brown and black. And I'm just going to kind of go in here and just do a little circle for the knot in the wood. And you can do it slower too and get like exact with your grain of your wood if you want. I find, I just take this brush and just wisp it back and forth, up and down, back and forth, and then around a knot. Because there's so much grain in wood, depending on this rough wood, it's nice to just, look at how nice this is. Just go in there and get all these lines. Nice and dark. And then there's little cracks in the wood, or the board is separated here a little bit, so put that. And I don't want to be really perfect with it because these are wood. This is wood, so it's not perfect. This is a barn wood or something, so it's not perfectly perfect. All right, I think that's it, guys. Oh, I wanted to show you just real quick, one more minute. I have one more minute left here. And so if you want to go back in with opaques, take a little bit opaque. Take some of this color that's a little bit more opaque, but add some white to it. And you get a little highlight. Let's say you want a little highlight from the background and stuff. There's nothing wrong with this. And I know that this is not transparent then. It's not transparent watercolor, but I do like that look of going in with like a little bit of the opaques to get like your highlights. And I've been doing a lot of it lately, especially when I'm plein air painting. because I'm competing against oil painters, and so this kind of makes it look a little bit like you have some oil painting techniques in there too. All right, so that's pretty much it, I think. Oh, one more thing. This is be really dark, this line right here, and then we're good. All right. A little bit of light right here hitting the edge. And there you have it, guys. And so this is this evening's, and then here's the one. Oh, I put some lines in there, but see again about the difference between lights and the value pattern. The pattern here of dark and light is much better than this one over here. There's a lot of light in here that doesn't make the pattern go as much as this one. And even with this lighting I have here, it's just like if I could put a little shadow over everything. I have to figure that out so it's not so vibrant. All right, dagger. Yeah, the dagger brush. Thank you, Dave. Okay, last thing. Thank you again for painting. I need to try. Thanks, guys. Thanks again for coming by on a Thursday. Next Thursday, I will be back in time, hopefully. It's just I'm going to have a hard time. I got to figure out when I'm going to write the newsletter because on Sunday I'll be in Louisville, Kentucky, and then I'll be there for 3 days until Wednesday. So Thursday I'll be back, and on Sunday I will probably be in a hotel Sunday morning. So I may do a demonstration from a hotel or maybe outside. We'll see. All right. So until Sunday or next Thursday, we'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.